Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I hope you guys are all doing really well. So here we are at the beginning of November. Spooky season is officially over, but of course it's Halloween every day here on my channel, and of course we read horror, thrillers, spooky books, all the things all year long. So October was a bit of a mixed bag. So we had amazing reads, we had mediocre reads, we had a couple of DNFs. So if you guys are interested in hearing my thoughts, we're going to get into those right now. So actually the first book that I put on for my audiobooks for this month was Halloween Party by Agatha Christie. And you know, on pretty much every list that you see or other booktubers talking about, that kind of thing, this book is almost always on there. And it's a classic. Of course, Agatha Christie is a much beloved author, and I think I've only ever read one of her books once, and it was years and years and years ago, like I was a teenager. So I'm not really an Agatha Christie fan, but I have been reading a lot of gothic and books from that time period sort of thing. So I was like, you know what, let's give it a try. And so I ended up DNFing this one probably about 25 to 30% of the way through. And it wasn't because I wasn't entirely enjoying it, but there were a few things that at the moment were kind of getting under my skin. So the first thing that I noticed that I found really kind of annoying is the repetitiveness of the beginning of the book. You know, so you have Poirot who came in and he's trying to investigate this you know, mystery that had happened at this Halloween party, and they just kept saying things over and over and over and over and over, and just the language that was being used and stuff like that, I found it very repetitive. But at the same time, like, I do know that that's characteristic of, you know, writing from that time period and books from that time period. So this one I don't think is going to be a DNF forever. I think it may have been that I just wasn't in the mood for it at the time. So I just put this one aside. I was really excited to dive into some other books. And although I was kind of disappointed that it didn't work out for me, sometimes like certain books and certain people just aren't going to jive. So this is one that I'm glad that I did give it a go this Halloween, but you know, maybe Agatha Christie just isn't for me. I'm not really too sure. I am probably going to pick up another one of her books at some point. And the second DNF that I had was also on audiobook, and it's a new release, and this one is just plain no, it did not work for me. It was frustrating the crap out of me, and that is The September House by Carissa Orlando. And this one is a new release that just came out this past September actually, and I believe I had it on my like my new release video that came out that month. This sounded like it was so good, and I mean, you guys know that I have a love of haunted house stories. I grew up in a haunted house, so this was very much about like an old haunted Victorian kind of thing. There's blood running down the walls, and every September, like, the haunting like kind of ratchets up to a whole new level, and this family is dealing with all of these sort of things that are happening in the house, and it wasn't what I was expecting. It wasn't what I wanted. And the book was almost written in a very contemporary, sort of almost comical way. So it didn't have any spookiness really that was going on. It was very much, like I said, written almost like a contemporary story that had a haunting element in it, if I could put it that way. I wouldn't classify it as a horror or even a thriller book, really. It just didn't work for me. I found that the writing style I didn't like, the way the story was presented I didn't like, and then even within the storylines in the book, like, it was bouncing back and forth. So she would be talking about, like, you know, her and her husband who moved into this house, and then all of a sudden she went way back to, hey, you know, this is how we met, this is how we started dating, this is how our first date went, this is how we got married, then we had a kid. So it was like all of this fluff and filler, and I was like, I don't care. I don't care how you met your husband. I don't care, like, obviously you guys had a first date, obviously you got married, like, I mean, that's obvious, right? I want to know what's happening right now in this house that's haunted. I don't care. So then she talked about her daughter, and her daughter was actually coming to visit her. So she was like, you know, I can't remember the daughter's name. She's like, you know, she's called and she's coming to visit, and oh my God, like, I have to hide this haunting, and, you know, I can't let her know what's going on, even though this is like an adult daughter. And so then she goes back to like the daughter's past, and she goes through the whole past of the daughter. And I'm like, again, I don't care. I want to know what's happening right now. And then, so the daughter gets there, and she comes in like a blaze of glory, F this and F that, and telling her mother off. Why is this door closed? And the daughter is just very unlikable, just really, really, really unlikable. And so I got to a certain point where, like, I'm sorry, if I spoke to my mother that way, like, there would be, all hell would break loose, and she'd be like, what the hell is up with your attitude? Because she was just treating the mother like crap. And then the mother was like trying to hide this haunting. And it's like, okay, your kid is an adult. Obviously she's in the house, she's gonna start seeing things. And then, so they have these like resident ghosts as well. And it very shallowly dips into like, you know, what happened to them in the past and stuff, but it's very bouncy, like it bounces back and forth. So there's just the way the story is told, like I said, the unlikable characters. I don't give a shit about the backstory with the way it was presented. Like, it didn't add anything to the story. It was just fluff and filler and all of that. It was just awful. So I don't think I made it very far in. I think I was only a couple of hours into the book, and I was like, no, I can't get through it. So this one really didn't work for me. I think it's kind of one of those ones that's a mixed bag of reviews. Some people really liked it. I did see a lot of 5-star reviews, and then I did see other people who either DNF'd it or just gave it a really low star review as well. So it's one of those ones that's a mixed bag. Of course, I'm never going to tell anybody to not read a book. Please, you know, if you're into kind of contemporary stories with a little bit of spookiness, this might work for you. But for me, it just wasn't it. So having said that, the first 2 books that I did finish this month were Garlic and the Vampire and Garlic and the Witch, which are 2 children's graphic novels. And these books are so cute. They're so cute. I went to my library and got them out. I heard Nakia from Nakia's Hideaway talking about these ones, and I believe she's only read Garlic and the Vampire, but I went ahead and got both of them. And I'm hoping that she does do more of these stories because they're so flippin' adorable. I'm not one for much in the way of graphic novels, but I do enjoy children's books that have really, really good solid messages and are just wholesome and, you know, have all of the wonderful feels. And these really did have it. They had really great messages. It's about a little bulb of garlic who has to go on this adventure, and she has her little vegetable friends, and they're all owned by this witch who has a garden, so it has witchy vibes. It has like cottage core. Like I said, it's cute, it's warm and fuzzy, it was all the things. I adored both of these books. So Garlic and the Vampire, I believe I actually gave a full 5 stars, and then Garlic and the Witch was a 4-star read. So if you guys you know, I wouldn't recommend getting them on ebook because, you know, you want to see the beautiful illustrations. But if you have a local library and you want to go out and pick these up, I mean, obviously you can read them in a day. They're so flipping cute, and it was really a great start into my actual Halloween reads because I would consider like witchy sort of cottagecore vibes still that autumnal, you know, look and feel, and the warmth and everything was what I was looking for. So highly recommend those. And next I did read Halloween Party out of the Fear Street series. This is Fear Street number 8. This is a Fear Street that I didn't read back when I was reading them when I was a teenager. This was one that I'd never picked up before. And I really enjoyed this one. It was one of those ones that was very much like a Clue game, you know, the board game Clue. So all of these teenagers end up going to this Halloween party that's being hosted by, I think she's the new girl in school. I can't remember if she's a new girl or she's an exchange student. I believe she's just a new girl, and nobody really knows her, but she has a very specific invite list. So one of the other girls that's invited is trying to figure out, like, why did she only invite these people and leave everybody else out, or she wouldn't extend invitations to people who even asked for one. So that was the start of the mystery. And then of course you have everybody that's talking about their costumes and like what's going to happen and all of this kind of stuff. And then you have the wonderful Halloween party that actually starts, and then the lights go out and come back on, and there's a boy that's dead on the floor. So there's a murderer amongst them, and all of the kids end up getting sucked into this mystery. And this is one that it held my interest. I wouldn't say it's my favorite Fear Street, but it's one of the better ones that I've read in my rereads over the past couple of years. I think my favorite so far for my rereads has been The Overnight. I really enjoyed that one. But this one, I think I gave it 4 stars. I can't remember. Let me just look it up actually. Actually, I ended up giving this one a full 5 stars on Goodreads, but I believe like in actual reality it was a 4.5. It was great. I would highly recommend this one to anyone who's looking for one of the fear streets that's a little bit better. I really, really enjoyed this one. And then next up, I read one of the Creepover books. I talk about the Creepover series a lot on this channel. It's so, so cute. So it's a middle grade series, and they have different levels of scariness or spookiness in them, and this one I believe was way up at level 5, so this was one of the really, really scary ones. And this was No Trick-or-Treating, the Super Scary Super Specials, You're Invited to a Creepover number 9 by PJ Knight and Ellie O'Ryan. And this one was really, really good. So this is about a girl who's a big city girl, and she ends up moving to a small town with her family, and so she goes like from big city into like farm country. So, you know, it's a little bit of a culture shock for her when she's coming in, and then she, you know, ends up making some friends. And then she's a huge Halloween lover, and not only is she a Halloween lover, but her birthday also falls on Halloween. And she starts learning that in this town, like, nobody trick-or-treats. Nobody talks about Halloween. Everybody is like very skittish. They're trying to avoid it. And she's like, what the heck? Like, I want to go trick-or-treating in this new town. I want to experience Halloween. It's my bloody birthday. Like, I want my friends over. So her and a couple of her new friends decide that they're going to have a sleepover at the new girl's house. But what they don't tell the parents, of course, is that they're going to sneak out and go trick-or-treating. And this town is completely cursed. So there's some you know, old-timey sort of curse that's wound in here that happens on Halloween if people go trick-or-treating. Won't get into what it is, but the spook factor in this one was definitely on point. I really, really enjoyed this. If you haven't checked out the Creepover series, I'd highly recommend it. And this one I gave 4 stars. I thought it was really spooky cute, but it definitely kept me invested in the story. It wasn't just something that middle graders would enjoy. Like, it had a really good, you know, cursed town and what was happening, and these girls trying to figure out this stuff. So the creep factor was definitely there. And like I said, this was way up on a level 5 on the creepometer, which is a little meter on the back of the book that shows you how creepy and how spooky the book is going to be. And it was definitely there. I really, really enjoyed this. I read it like in a day, and it totally had me hooked in. So highly recommend this one. And then next up, I read The Halloween Moon by Joseph Fink on audiobook. And this one had all of the Halloween feels. So this is about a young Jewish girl who is kind of an outsider a little bit at school. And she gets bullied heavily, actually, specifically by this one really, really mean girl. But she also has a best friend who's very, very supportive. And she is a Halloween junkie. She loves Halloween. But she's at that age where she's, you know, am I too old, or can I still go trick-or-treating? And she has like, you know, she's fully intending on going out, but her parents are telling her like, you're getting a little old for that kind of thing. And it really breaks her heart because she's a Halloween lover, and, you know, she's coming into her teenage years. So she decides to sneak out and go trick-or-treating with her best friend anyway. And this wonderful Halloween adventure starts to develop. And this very much has the same sort of feels as The Halloween Tree by Ray Bradbury. Not in the same way, but it still has that same sort of atmosphere, the same sort of vibe. And it's this whole adventure that ends up unraveling, and she ends up, you know, having to try to rescue her friends and figure out what's going on, and the adults are acting weird, and basically there's like, you know, a spell that's put on the town, and she has to try to figure this out. And so she really comes into herself. It's very much a coming of age story, and it had all the wonderful feels. So if you're a Halloween lover, you like I said, coming of age stories. And the other element that was in here that I really, really liked was it had a lot of Jewish history. So like for her, you know, she's talking about how her friends at school and even the teachers don't understand how important some holidays are to them because they're not Christian holidays, which is what is typically celebrated as part of just the regular school year. And so like I said, she's kind of on the outside, and she's coming into those adult years as part of the Jewish faith. And this was great. It had a lot of heart. It had a lot of adventure. It had all the Halloween feels. So if you like like I said, if you like Halloween, you like coming of age stories, this one was fantastic. It was a 4-star read for me again, and you know, it was one of those ones I loved putting it on in the car. It gave me all the warm and fuzzy Halloween feels, and you know, I can remember that time when I was a teenager and I was like, you know, am I too old? And then of course you start going around and people are actually saying at the doors like, aren't you a little old for this and stuff, and you know, so we've all kind of been there, as especially Halloween lovers, so this one was definitely a good one. And next up I read a girl talk book. This is The Ghost of Eagle Mountain, Girl Talk number 6, and this one is not Halloween themed. So this one is actually, funny enough, it actually would have fit in with this time of year, so we're going into winter, and it had to do with a group basically of school students who go on a field trip to a ski lodge. And obviously there's, you know, it's called Eagle Mountain, so they're out skiing and they figure out that there's actually a Native American legend that surrounds this mountain. So of course you have the stuff that's happening to these kids, the spooky elements that are happening to these kids that are, you know, very much in isolation on this mountain, and then tying into a Native American legend. I don't know if it is a true one or not, but it very much had that feel. And I really like stories that have folklore sort of legends wound into them, and they're wound into as part of the haunting that's actually happening in present day. And this one had a lot of good messages too. One of the young girls who's actually on the school trip is Native American herself, so you have a little bit of banter back and forth with some other kids who are a little bit racist and stuff like this, and she really gets defended by her friends. So it has all of the good feels, it has, you know, all of those wonderful warm messages, but it does have a spooky element to it as well. So this is the first girl talk book that I've read, you know, recently. I read one back when I was a kid and I really enjoyed it. I believe it was Girl Talk number 2, but that was the only one that I had ever read. So I was really happy to pick up one here again. And again, this was a 4-star read. So it had a wonderfully spooky element. So even though it wasn't Halloween themed, it still had all of the vibes that I wanted. And of course, when I was reading it, it was actually starting to snow here. So it actually did end up being very thematic for the time. And then next up started my rereads. So there were a couple of short story collections, which you guys know from my pile of possibilities that short stories are really great for this time of year, especially if you're out doing other Halloween things. And it was getting to the point where I was starting to get real tired with constantly being out and constantly being on the go. So I switched gears a little bit to reading some short stories, and I did also reorganize my library a couple of weeks ago. So the shelves needed a really good cleaning, things needed to be reorganized. I had a huge pile of books that needed to be put away. So I listened to both Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark and More Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, both of which are, you know, obviously classics. They're obviously favorites, and the first book in the series really brings back memories for me as a kid, for my grade 4 Halloween party at school, which my mom was my grade 4 teacher, and she put on the audiobook for us. And I remember it's one of those things that, you know, you hear when you're a kid that it really sticks in your memory and you really remember that whole situation, and it brings back a lot of nostalgic memories. So while I was reorganizing the library and cleaning the shelves and doing all the things, I listened to both audiobooks and they were really, really good. So I mean, obviously I don't need to get into any of this. Both of them are 5-star. Well, I would say the first one is probably a 5-star read. The second one is 4 to 4.5 stars. But I mean, if you're a horror lover, you probably read these books yourself, so I don't need to get into a whole lot of them. But I did say in my vlog where I read those that my favorite out of the first one, I have 2 favorites actually. One is the story, so Me Tai Dodie Walker is my favorite story. It still freaks me out. I think it's crazy scary. And the other one is the Hearst song, so I still to this day sing the Hearst song on the regular, and I do like to recite poetry every now and again. So both of these were great to listen to, and I was smiling the whole time I was cleaning my shelves. I had a really, really good time. I'm so happy that I put them on. And then of course the other short story collection that I reread was Autumn Crow by Cameron Chaney, the original book. So in September, of course, I read his new book, Autumn Crow High, Fresh Hell, which just came out, and it was so good. So I wanted to revisit the old stories to see the connections. And like I said, the new book So I did do a review on the new book. If you missed it, it is in my back catalog. But I did say the new book is a lot darker and doesn't have as much of the creepy, cozy feels as the original stories. So the original stories are dark as well. They do absolutely have dark elements. And I was just, after reading the novel, I definitely wanted to go back and try to find the connections in there and refresh my memory, refresh my thoughts of the original stories, which are some of my favorites. So I think there was only like 2 stories that I didn't reread out of this one. You know, this is a 5-star read for me. It's on my list of all-time favorite reads. And, you know, what else can I say about this one? It's fantastic. If you haven't had a chance to pick up Autumn Crow yet, I'm not just saying it because Cameron is on BookTube and I want to give him a good review. It is a really, really, really good book. So I had fun rereading those stories as well. I think I can recite most of them by memory now. And 2 of my favorite stories out of this collection are Burnt Brownies, which is really, it tugs at the heartstrings. Burnt Brownies and Crypt TV are both of my favorites. So I was happy to yet again reread Autumn Crow for this Halloween. And one novel that I reread, so I think I was looking for a lot of cozy comforts during this specific time. And I think that's because I'm very much an introvert. I'm happy as a clam to stay home and read with a cup of tea or have a movie marathon. My husband's very much the same way, and we were constantly on the go during September and October with different events that we went to and all of the Halloween hunting and decorating and all of the things. So I was looking for comfort. I think that's why I did so many rereads. So the next reread that I had, which was a novel, was Truly Devious by Maureen Johnson. And I put this one on because book 2 in this series was on sale on Audible, so I downloaded that one as well. And I really wanted to listen to this series with my friend that I drive back and forth to work with. We carpool, and she's been enjoying my audiobooks as well. So I thought she might like this series, and I thought it was time for a reread anyway, because there's 2 books in the series at the end, book 4 and 5, that I haven't read yet. And so I wanted to go back and refresh my memory of this one. So if you don't know anything about this book, basically this is about it's a dark academia. So it's about this elite school for really gifted children, and there's a young girl who gets invited to go to this school, but she's like an amateur detective. She loves true crime. She loves to solve mysteries, and there is a murder mystery that actually happened as part of this school back in 1936. So it's a dual timeline with what's happening with her at this school, which the mystery continues, and she's also trying to unravel what happened in the past. So I have read the first 3 books in this series. Previously, I've actually read them twice, so this is my 3rd reread of this one. And this has to be one of my favorite YA series that I've read. It's still a 5-star read for me, even on my 3rd round, and I think my carpool buddy is enjoying them as well. So I'm going to be continuing rereading that series so I can get to the other 2 books that I haven't read. But other than that, I don't have much to say about it because I've already spoken extensively about this series on the channel. But this is another one, if you enjoy YA and you enjoy sort of dark academia and all of those vibes and mysteries and that sort of thing, murder mysteries, this is definitely a highly recommended one as well. And next up, I finally read Halloween Reign, which is book number 2 in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer Brown series. And Matthew and I are rewatching Buffy right now, so I thought this fit in. It was very thematic. It fit in absolutely perfectly for not only this time of year, but the fact that I'm rewatching the series as well. And I really wanted to read this one, not only because it was Halloween themed, but it's also one of the novelizations that is not based on one of the original episodes of the show. So this is an all-new story, so didn't know anything about it, obviously. And the other fact is that it kind of veers a little bit away from what we would consider canon in the Buffy universe, that on Halloween, all of the demons think it's very kitsch, it's very overrated, it's very, you know, they just stay at home. So the Slayer doesn't have to do much on Halloween because it's like the one night of the year that the demons are not out and about and causing havoc. But in this book, it's actually the opposite, and the demons are very, very active on Halloween. And I love, 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 love the story, the folklore, the everything that's wound in here. It has all of the Halloween feels. It's talking about Samhain, it's talking about you know, jack-o'-lanterns and Halloween folklore, and then it has this whole new story wrapped in with the Scoobies and Giles, and they're trying to figure out how to defeat this big bad, and it was just amazing. You know, the Buffy Halloween episodes are some of my favorites out of any series from the 90s. I love the Buffy Halloween episodes, and this one absolutely does fit right in there with one that's, I would say, one of my favorite stories that I've read out of the Buffy universe. So even though they never made an episode out of it, I would highly recommend this one, especially if you've watched the series and you want to read something that's a whole new, you know, story within the story. I guess I would put it that way. I really enjoyed it. This was a 4.5-star read. I would highly recommend it. And the other thing is, so this book was written by Christopher Golden and Nancy Holder, who very much have been involved in the Buffyverse, so they really captured the voice of all of the characters. It sounded like Buffy, it sounded like Xander, it had all of the quips and the sarcasm and the jokes and everything that was wound in here, and I could just picture the whole thing as I was following along. So this one has to be one of my favorite Buffy stories ever. Definitely worthy of my favorite Buffy episodes, or book in this case. And then last but not least, I read The Lighthouse by Alex Bell, so this has nothing to do with Halloween whatsoever. So by the end of the month, I was just exhausted, and although I'm very, very sad that spooky season is over, I had a good dose of Halloween between all the things that we were doing. So I wanted to read something that was still spooky, obviously, because we read mostly horror around here, but really didn't have anything to do with Halloween at all. And this one, The Lighthouse by Alex Bell, definitely took the cake. So this, I'm not going to talk a lot about this book here because I'm actually going to be doing a review, which will be the next video on the channel. This book took the cake, I think, for the entire month. It was so, so good. I was swallowed up into this book. Oh man. If you enjoyed Frozen Charlotte and Charlotte Says by Alex Bell, this is the same level of spooky, creepy, all the things. I loved this book. I just finished it last night, actually, and I still can't stop thinking about that ending. So it was a bang-up way to finish off my spooky season reads, finish off October. Of course, this eats into November, but I don't really, you know, have a hard stop on October 31st or the last day of the month where I wrap up my reading. That's why I kind of call it recent reads instead of a reading wrap up, you know, and this one, it was just slam bang. It was so, so good. So stay tuned for my review of that one that's going to be coming up. But hey guys, so I actually completely forgot about this book that I read in October, and probably because it wasn't one of my favorites. So I'm not sure why it didn't show up in my Goodreads list. I've got to look back and find out why. But I also read You're Not Supposed to Die Tonight, and I read this one on audiobook. So this was like, I wanted to read something that was a slasher story. And this one is marketed as this camp or like a horror experience where it's supposed to be like you can pay to go to this experience, and it's like it's put together like a slasher movie. Like you can be tied up and you can be bound and you can be pushed and shoved, and basically you're being chased by a killer. And but as time goes on, somebody actually does die, and they realize that they're being chased by an actual killer. So the staff of the camp are being chased by an actual killer. And this one, you know, I gave it 3 stars on Goodreads, but it's really more of a 2.5. Even as time has gone by, I'm like, this one really didn't do it. So let's get into why I didn't like it. So the first thing that really took away from this book was the narrator of the audiobook. So something that I have to start doing, and I mentioned this on Sprints with Amy a couple of weeks ago, I really need to sample books before I buy them, because a narrator's voice and the way that they tell a story is really going to affect how I think about it. So number one, the narrator really, and it was almost like it was very much put on. She did the whole narration of the book in almost like a Valley Girl accent, and it just really took away from everything for me. All I could picture was Amber from Clueless, which of course was, you know, popular in my day. All I could picture was Amber reading this book.
Mr. Hall, how can I answer that? The topic is Haiti, and she's talking about some little party.
Hello, it was his 50th birthday.
Whatever.
And then, so she made the characters seem very, very shallow. And then she didn't read the book in the voice that it should have been. So she would read, say, a sentence in like her normal Valley Girl voice, and then it would say, so-and-so said in a low, gravelly voice. If it's supposed to be read in a low, gravelly voice, that's what you should be reading it in. Or somebody said slowly, but she's shouting it. So it just wasn't, the narrator didn't do it for me. And then the other thing is, which I think, you know, it was a risk, that the story didn't go in a direction that I think I was expecting, and a lot of people wouldn't expect. So the author took a big risk in doing that, and although it was interesting and I thought it was okay, it wasn't what I was expecting. So that kind of took away from my enjoyment of the book. And then the other thing is, I don't like any ambiguity in my horror whatsoever. I like things to be wrapped up in a pretty little bow, and here's the story, here's exactly what happened, and that's it. So all in all, like, I did finish this book, but it wasn't one of my favorites. So like I said, I gave it a 3-star on Goodreads, but it's really more of a 2 to a 2.5, I think, is probably the maximum that I would give it. Of course, like I said, I'm not gonna tell you guys not to read a book. If you want to give it a go, please give it a go and let me know what you think of it. I know there's a couple of other people that thought it was just kind of mediocre, and I know a couple of other people who actually ended up DNFing it. So this one wasn't one of my favorites, but I'm not sure why I forgot to put it in the video. So let's get back to the outro. But yeah, that's all of the books that I read in November. I don't know, what was that, 10, 11? I'm not really too sure. So we had a really, really good reading month, and I'm ahead on my Goodreads goal now because of the short books and short story collections that I read, some of the rereads, which of course I can fly through pretty quickly. So all in all, it was a good month. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you've read any of these books, let me know down below which ones you enjoyed, which ones you didn't enjoy, what you think about my DNFs. I would really love to talk to you guys. But until next time, stay spooky, everybody. Bye.